Hey there, the Japan Code here, and it has been a while since my last update, hasn't it? So this is going to be, of course, my 4-year update, and I have not done one since 2 years. Well, I guess it was 2 years and 4 months. But yeah, so some of you are probably wondering, where I've been over the past 2 months. And if you're one of those people, then that means you don't follow me on Twitter. So go and follow me at the Japan Code. I had to. But speaking of Twitter, if you do follow me on Twitter, you know that my chair kind of broke yesterday. It literally snapped in half. So I'm in a little bit of a pain. Oh god, that's a lot of dust. I'm in a little bit of a pain. It's not too bad though. And I'm just on a regular kitchen table right now. But on the plus side, it's not squeaky. So I guess this is probably going to be the first video I make without a squeaky chair. So yeah, basically, why haven't I made a 3-year update? There's a few reasons. I mean, the first one is because I felt like I had not made enough progress, so I felt like it wasn't worth it. Because, I wouldn't have much to say. It would just be like, yeah, it's the same as last year, moving on. I guess it would have done a short video, though, for once, which this is definitely not going to be. And then there's also the fact that I kind of felt a little bit overwhelmed because I had set expectations for myself that I just did not reach. But, part of the issue is the expectations themselves. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that right now. But, that was one of the reasons. And then, of course, what I think is the main reason is that I was just being lazy and didn't feel like taking the time. I kept thinking I could spend a couple of hours making an update video, or I could immerse for a couple of hours, and then I would proceed to not spend that time immersing or something. So yeah, it was really laziness. So yeah, as per usual, I'm looking not at the camera because I have some notes. Normally it would be on my computer there, but because of the direct sunlight, it's kind of hard to see. So I just got them up on my phone down here. So yeah, let's just get started, or else we're never gonna finish this. So first, I guess I'm gonna go through the 3rd year, and then after that, the 4th year, and then after that, I will go through what my plan is for my 5th year, and I'll put some timestamps for those sections, I guess. So if you do follow me on Twitter and you already know what happened in the past 2 years, then you can just skip to what my plan is, or if you want to, you can still sit through all of this. Although I highly recommend you go on 1.5 speed or even 2 times speed or something, because that's a long time to be listening to a non-native English speaker talk about learning Japanese. So yeah, let's get started. So from early 2020, I knew I wanted to build a better financial future for myself. Wait, no, cut. So, starting the 3rd year, of course, I don't really remember all the details. I kind of had to go through, Twitter posts and, my book meter and AniList account and stuff like that to kind of try to build back a picture of how that year went. But that was a while ago, so I don't exactly remember. So, basically, at the end of the 2-year, 4 months update, what I said is that I had started immersing strictly for fun, or I guess 95% for fun, and that I had somehow surpassed the feeling of wanting to be efficient. That was wrong. I wouldn't say it was a lie because I did believe it, but that was definitely wrong. I just didn't realize how hard it can actually be to just have fun, and that's it, You'd think it would be easy to just have fun, but yeah. So sometime in the first quarter of the year, I kind of read through 2.5 volumes of light novels, and then I burned out from them, obviously, because I was trying to read ReZero as basically my first series. I mean, I had read the first volume of Konosuba before, but that also made me burn out, so, yeah, basically, that was too much right at the start, and then I was also trying to force myself to do a certain amount every day of it, so yeah, didn't work out. And then after that, I switched to just manga and anime, and then a little bit of variety shows and YouTube on the side, but mostly manga and anime, all the way up until about mid-July. And then the same thing as all the previous years happened. I started playing RuneScape, and then I kind of burned out from Japanese, and then I had trouble, I kept jumping between I'm gonna play RuneScape full time to wait, no, I don't want to give up Japanese, go back to Japanese, and then go back to RuneScape and all that for a couple of months. But I did learn one thing in that period, and that's that every time these burnouts happen, it's at a specific point in time. It's always when I start having to work overtime. So as some of you know, I work in a warehouse, specifically a distribution center for a party store here in Quebec. And obviously, like in somewhere between June and August is when we start receiving stuff for Halloween. And obviously Halloween is our biggest season. So that's when I start having to work overtime. And every year I'd always plan for the fact that I would have less time to do Japanese, but I never planned for the fact that I would obviously have less energy to. And that year is when I actually realized that. I realized, wait a second, even though I have the hours to do whatever I was planning to do, I don't have the energy for it. And that's why I'm burning out, because every day I'm like, okay, I'm going to do X amount of things. And then I'd fail to do X amount of things because I wouldn't have the energy. And then I'd feel guilty about it. And then the next day I'd try to do even more. But then, of course, I'd have even less energy. So I'd do less. And, it was just a big snowball effect from there. So at least at that point, I actually realized that. And spoiler alert, in the 4th year, I didn't burn out. So that was a good realization to make. Obviously, it means that I spent a couple of months, just like every year's before that, not doing much Japanese. I didn't do no Japanese. It was just maybe like an hour on work days and then 2 to 3 hours on weekends, maybe. I don't actually remember, like I said. But basically, like I said, I kind of like jumped back and forth between them, between RuneScape and Japanese, up until about mid-November, when I finally managed to get myself to quit. I deleted the game and like just stopped completely. I stopped looking at news and stuff like that. And to this day, now a year and a half later, I still have not gone back to playing RuneScape. So, I guess that like that period was really what I needed to realize it and to actually move on from it properly. And then I mentioned in a previous update that for manga, obviously, I like my physical manga, but I talked about how I didn't like reading on the computer because a lot of the scans were blurry and they were hard to read. And it's kind of true, but at that moment in mid-November 2020, I decided to start actually reading manga on the computer, specifically reading series that I didn't own but wanted to read. And wow, that was a big difference. I don't think I've ever read as much manga as I did at the end of 2020. So in the second half of November, I read like 30 volumes or something like that. And then in December, I read 50. And the only reason it wasn't more is because I stopped about a week before the end of the month to switch to something else. But yeah, so it turns out the only reason I had issues with manga on the computer is because when I tried in the past, I sucked, obviously, as it was on previous attempts at Japanese where I didn't make it anywhere. So obviously now I actually understand a hell of a lot more and I have more experience with reading and recognize the kanji. I can obviously recognize the kana a lot better than back then. So the fact that it's blurry doesn't matter that much. And like on top of that, some of the manga that I read don't have furigana in the first place. So the fact that it's blurry doesn't matter because the actual text is a little bit bigger and the furigana, and that's what's really blurry generally. And also I found a lot of higher quality scans. Depends on what series, obviously, but yeah. And so because of that, I ended up reading a lot in the very last moments of 2020. That was 2020, right? Yeah, 2020. I ended up reading a lot of manga in the last moments of 2020. I think I read like 150 volumes in that year, something like that. I don't remember exactly. And then that was the end of the 3rd year. So basically, so I went back to my 2-year update, and I had set myself some goals for the 3rd year, which of course, as you can guess, I didn't make any of them really, because that's part of the reason why I didn't make an update, because I felt overwhelmed by that, or guilty, I guess, or felt like I hadn't reached the expectations I had set. But I'm just gonna kind of list out those goals. There were two main goals. Was one, I wanted to build a habit of making new cards on Anki daily. I failed that very hard. I think in that whole year I made about 1,000 new cards, maybe, which is better than none, but definitely not consistent as I wanted. And then the other goal was to improve my focus. As some of you know, I've talked about that a lot, that my focus is pretty shit. As you can probably already tell while I'm recording this. I'm having a hard time focus, and then in my immersion, it's not as bad. But, it's something that I know I need to work on. I had written 5 steps down that I wanted to take in order to fix my focus. And then there's only one of these steps that I actually made any steps towards in that year. So the first one was to quit energy drinks. I didn't. I mean, I tried, but after 2 weeks, I got back into them. So, no. Then was better sleep. No. I mean, it didn't get worse at least, but it didn't get all that much better. The third one was to pay my debts. Obviously, I wasn't expecting to actually pay them all in that year, but I did take the first steps for that. As you can see, I'm obviously in a very different room than in my last update, and that's because I moved back to my mom's place. I'm pretty sure I had talked about that in the video that I was about to move. I'm not living here free, but it is a lot cheaper than renting. I pay her like about $350 per month, whereas an apartment, just a 3.5 apartment, is like over $700, and probably more now because I know rent prices went up a lot during COVID. So I'm saving a few $100s on this, which I have started putting towards my debts, which I have reduced a lot since then. So I'd say this one was, it was a success because I didn't expect to pay all of them, right? Like even like now in 2022, I haven't finished paying them. So, but I made some good progress. So yeah. And then the fourth point was to eat healthier. No, did not make it. And then the fifth point is meditation, which no, I did not do that. I talked a lot about meditation in previous videos, but that's mostly because Matt was recommending it at the time. And I do still think that meditation is good and is something I should do, but it's not something that I necessarily want to do right now, so I'm not going to try to force myself, because then it's just going to keep leading to more burnouts and stuff like that. So yeah. And yeah, that was basically it for the third year. So now on to the fourth year. So one big difference in the fourth year is that, as a lot of you probably know, I started tracking my immersion. So for the first 4 months, I think I only tracked through like reading, listening, Anki, categories like that. And then in May, I switched to tracking through media type. So I have like a tracking for anime, for light novels, for manga, for YouTube, and all of that. And then after that, I have my spreadsheet just calculate everything. So I still know how much reading I did, how much listening I did, and all of that. But I also know where exactly I spent that time. So hopefully I'm not lazy and I actually show the tracking in the editing, but yeah. So basically in January, I focused on visual novels. I say visual novels, but I only read 2, and one of them was at the end of December. But so basically at first I read Hanahida, which a lot of people know as a very short and boring visual novel. But the reason I read it is because it's known as being one of the easiest. And the reason I wanted to read one of the easiest is because with my previous failures with light novels, where every time I tried them, I would burn out, I kind of needed that little, boost me up kind of thing, right? To boost my confidence. So I decided to go with the easiest one. And then I was like, if it's hard, then I know I still need, some more immersion before I can properly get into it, or I need to mine more and really get into Anki properly. But then I read it and it was, as they say, really easy. So I decided, I'll just try another visual novel. And I'm not a big visual novel I'm not a big visual novels fan. I do enjoy them, but I'm not. It's not like with say manga where I have like a list of hundreds of series that I want to try. Right. I just have a couple, and most of them are visual novels that had an anime adaptation. So I decided to look within those, and I settled on Clannad, and then I played that for the whole month, and I really did enjoy it. But for some reason, I kind of got tired of it. I guess maybe it's because it was a whole month of the same one. But I kind of got tired of it by the end, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to light novels now. I can tell that I am able to read. I just need to like not do too much and to also try to aim for something that's more at my level. And so in February, I started reading light novels instead of visual novels. And then I read light novels from February all the way till like mid-April or something like that. And in that time, I read 10 volumes. I read a couple of series. I'm probably not going to mention what I read, because if you want to know what I read, you can just go and check my book meter account. Actually, if you want to see what I immersed with in general, I'm gonna put all my media tracking sites down below, like AniList for anime, and then a book meter for light novels and manga, my drama list for variety shows and the whatever few dramas I've actually watched, backloggery for games. I'm probably forgetting some right now, but that actually sounds like that's probably all of them. Obviously, there's no YouTube trackers, but I'll talk about YouTube later. So yeah, like I said, I read about 10 volumes from February to April. And then in April, at some point, like I'm not sure what exactly happened, but from one day to the next, it's like or maybe not one day, but like 1 week to the next, it's like a flip switched in my head. A switch flipped in my head, and suddenly I just started doing like almost double the immersion. So before, like on weekdays, I would average about 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours per day, and then on weekends I would get like 5 to 7 hours, something like that. But then now from mid-April onwards, it was more like 3 to 4 hours per workday, and then 9 hours, even above 10 hours on weekend days. So it's a big difference. I do think, like I have some ideas about what happened. Like, first of all, I was actually having more fun. I was immersing with what I actually felt like immersing, and then if it was like I kind of moved away from the mentality of don't pay attention to the difficulty. How can I say that? I wasn't really paying attention to the difficulty, but if it was too hard, then I wasn't enjoying it enough, right? So I would actually allow myself to just drop it and move to something else until I found something that has the right combo of easy enough but hard, but not too easy, and like actually enjoyable, pretty much. And then there's also the fact that it was tracking. So I do think tracking is a big reason why this change happened, because looking back at the first few months, it made me realize, like, damn, I don't actually immerse as much as I thought I did. Because before that, I actually thought I got like 2-3 hours. Like in my mind, on a weekday it was 3 hours, and then on weekends it was above 6 hours. But then I noticed that, hey, that's not actually true. That's not an average. That's more like my best case scenario. So, and it's not like a conscious realization. It's just as I was tracking it, it just kind of settled in that, hey, I'm not actually doing all that much. I mean, it's not nothing. It's just not as much as I thought, right? And there's also the fact that through all the reading I did, the manga from mid-November to end of December, then the visual novels from end of December to end of January, and then light novels from February to mid-April. All of that obviously increased my comprehension a lot, because I had never done so much reading in Japanese. And then I was also mining for a good amount of the visual novels and light novels. So all of that, I think, helped me increase my comprehension, which in turn helped me enjoy more of my immersion. So like all of that put together just made it so that I was actually enjoying my immersion more, and thus I was doing more of it because I enjoyed it. So kind of a positive feedback loop. And then in May was by far the best month I had of the year, and that's because I had off for the first 2 weeks. I took my 2 weeks vacation, and I think I totaled everything up, and it was about 10 days of work in that whole month, because there was actually also there's a holiday somewhere in May in Canada, or at least in Quebec. I don't know about the rest. I don't remember what the holiday is in May. But yeah, so all my days off plus the weekends plus that one holiday meant I had like 21 days off in total, and then only 10 days of work. So obviously because of that, as long as I do a decent amount, it's gonna end up as my best month. And it was a lot of fun. That's like I said, that's the month I started tracking by media, so you can kind of see how I was spending my days. I was doing a lot. I was reading a lot of manga. I was playing some video games. At the time, I think I was playing Fire Emblem Three Houses. So if you know the game, there's a pretty high amount of reading in there. Obviously, there's some gameplay too, but like I'd say if you go in percentage, like you could say like 60%. 60 to 70% of the time tracked in gaming was actually reading. I don't calculate it that way. I have gaming as its own category, but just like to get an idea. I also watched a lot of variety shows. Like to me, variety shows is one of those things where the more I can watch them, the more I actually enjoy them. It's like there's this world of Genojin, right? And the more you watch them, the more you notice them, and then the more you learn about them, and then the more, as they show up, you're like, oh, it's that guy, oh, it's that girl. And then, I think like it's really one of those things where if you just pick a random one, you're not necessarily going to like it. But if you stick with it and then watch more, eventually you're going to, yeah, I think it makes sense, right? I don't really have to explain this, do I? And then I also watched a good amount of YouTube videos. I was at that time I was starting to get into VTubers actually. Yeah, I know VTubers, but there's a lot of them, and there's some for everyone. It's not only Hololive, right? There's more than just those ones. So there's a lot more realistic ones too. Like there's some that it's basically just a real person streaming, but with an anime avatar. There's nothing else that's different. So. And yeah, and also during that time period, I did 50 new cards every single day in Anki, so that was a nice boost to my Anki new cards. And yeah, so that was basically it for me. And then as I got back to work, and then it switched to June, of course, overtime season came again at work. And this year was actually, this in 2021, last year, but this year that I'm talking about, was actually the worst overtime period I've had so far. Well, that didn't mean that I had to do a lot of overtime. I think I did like twice the amount of previous years. Like from about June to November, I think I did somewhere between 100 and 150 hours of overtime, something like that. But despite the fact that this was the worst overtime season so far, I finally didn't burn out in this time period. Yes, that's right. For once, I did not burn out. I did not go back to RuneScape. None of that. I just kept doing Japanese. Now, obviously, I did less of it. But that's the thing. This time, I actually expected to do less. I was like, for once, first of all, I just didn't have any expectations for that time. I was just like, any amount that I do is better than the previous years, so I'm just going to do as much as I feel like doing, and that's it. And so because of that, I didn't have these high expectations. I had very low expectations, and so I kept busting those expectations, and then I'd feel good about it, and then I'd do more, and then I'd feel good about it, and it was a positive feedback loop once again. And on top of that, unlike the previous years, I was actually having fun this time. So obviously that made it, all of that put together, the lower expectations, knowing that I would have less energy and, not counting it. Okay, if I'm working in 1 extra hour, then that means I can do the same amount minus 1. No, it's not like that. So all of that put together meant that I actually kept doing Japanese during that time. And then as I got further in the period, I think in October, I don't have the tracking in front of me, but I think in October I actually did as much as if it was a regular month. So, that really shows a lot. So in August, I also started writing on the tracking how many hours I worked. Because, I think it helps to give context to the numbers. Like if there's a day that, if 2 days I did 3 hours, but then one of them I worked 9 hours, and then the other one I worked 8 hours and a half, then that shows that I actually did more as a percentage, I guess, on the day that I work 9 hours. And then on the flip side, if there's a weekend day that I end up doing, let's say 6 hours instead of my usual 10 hours, but then I look back to the week and see, okay, I worked like 50 to 55 hours that week. That makes sense. I obviously had way less energy on that one day off, so it kind of adds context, right, to the numbers. That way it's not just numbers. I mean, it's still just numbers, but like, the numbers have more meaning to them. And then in September, I also added steps and how many hours I've slept that night. Again, that's just to add context. I've since removed the steps because by now I don't really care about it, but I still do have the sleep hours because the actual sleep hours really help me notice, like, damn, my sleep really sucks. I can have like periods where I sleep like 4 to 5 hours, and then I don't know if it's rare. Like, again, I don't have the tracking in front of me, but I definitely don't have as many nights of sleep that are 7 hours and above as I thought I did. So yeah. And yeah, obviously, as far as context goes, if I get less sleep, then I know my immersion that day was less focused and was, less useful. And then I probably did less too because I had less energy and less willpower and, stuff like that. And then basically, from then on, as things calmed down and I started having more time to like try to do more, I got back to reading light novels, and then from then till the end of the year I read another 14 volumes, which brings me to a total of 26 volumes of light novels read in 2021. And then at some point in December I switched to doing vocab cards actually on Anki instead of sentences, and my god, is it nice. I still think sentences are great and they're a great way to get started, but after a certain point, like when you've read enough and that you immerse enough, vocab cards do the job. And I think they actually end up working better. Like, yeah, a lot of people talk about how, when you're doing a vocab card, since you're only seeing the word, it tests your knowledge of that word better than in sentences. And that is definitely true. At first I was like, who cares, the point of Anki is to supplement your immersion, so it doesn't matter if it's not testing you as well, right? And well, now that I'm actually doing it, I'm like, no, this is actually supplementing my immersion way better. I still do some sentence reps, and I notice as I'm doing them that I don't really know the words very well, whereas with the vocab cards, it's a lot easier to be like, there's one word, I didn't get it, so that's wrong. And, so you repeat them more because of that. But on the flip side, they take way less time to rep. So for a sentence card, it could take 10 to 15 seconds if you get it right, because you have to read the whole sentence and stuff. But for the vocab card, you just read the word and then it's instantly, yeah, I knew it, good. Or I don't remember what it means or how it's read, wrong. And so it's like 3 seconds max. Well, maybe not max, 3 to 5 seconds, let's put it that way. And because of that, you can do so many more reps in the same amount of time, or just do the same amount of reps in way less time. So it's a win-win, basically. And that's pretty much that pretty much brings us to the end of the fourth year. So basically, the goals I had set myself for the fourth year, I actually forgot I set myself goals for the fourth year. It was in my tracking in a tab way at the end. And at first I was seeing it because of the tabs, but every month I would add a new tab and then I would push it back, and at some point I stopped seeing it, and because of that I just completely forgot that I had goals in the first place. I had 4 goals for that year, all number-based goals, and I've reached 3 of those goals. So one of them was to get 500 hours of reading, and I ended the year with 510 hours of reading. And that's not counting the reading I did through gaming, obviously. So I'd say I absolutely got that. I mean, if you look just at the number, it's 510, it's only 10 hours more. But again, like I said, with the gaming added onto it, I'd say that's fair enough. And then, I mean, 510 is more than 500, so I've definitely reached it. And then the next one was to get 500 hours of listening. And as you can see, I definitely busted that by quite a lot. I got 900 and something hours of listening. And then my other goal was for a total of 1,000 hours of immersion, of active immersion. And I mean, just with listening, I got very close to beating that. So, everything counted. I did 1,700 hours. And then the last goal was to make 3,000 new Anki cards, which I actually didn't reach. I made 2,200 new cards, so I didn't quite make it, but it's more than double what I had done the previous year. And not counting RTK and Take Him back in the first year, is the year that I've done the most new cards. So while it wasn't a success, I would say that I'm still happy with the result after all, Beginning of the 4th year in January, I started by reading a volume of light novel. And then after that, I kind of jumped around a bunch of series and I couldn't find anything that I was really getting into. And that's kind of when I realized that at that point, I wasn't reading light novels because I was enjoying it. I was reading light novels because everyone in the community says you should read, and that it's helpful for your Japanese. And it is, don't get me wrong, it is. But as I've said a million times by now, I think having fun is one of the most important part for succeeding, and I wasn't having fun anymore with reading. So I decided to stop before I reached a point where I would burn out from it. And then at that point I kind of started questioning myself, like, okay, so now I decided I'm not going to read, but what am I going to do, what are my goals and in what direction am I heading towards? And that's basically at that point when I found Aussieman's channel. I probably butchered that. I've never said that, actually, now that I think about it. Aussieman. Like, I keep reading, my brain keeps reading it as Aussie. I'm sorry. Aussieman. And in particular, there is one video that really resonated with me, and I'm gonna put a clip right now of it.
But what is with the people that learn Japanese for 3-4 years, or like some long amount of time, and they're still going on about, I don't want to earn the output, and they never speak? There's no way you can ever get good at a language without ever speaking.
Oh, なるほどね. So, having said that, my plan for the 5th year, as you can guess, my plan is related to output. Some of you have probably noticed that I have said nothing about output. I fell pretty hard into the whole no early output, but not just that. Also the don't output until it comes to you naturally. And so I've been waiting for it to come naturally, and it has so far never happened. And the conclusion I came to is that, at least for me, that's not something that's going to happen. There's not going to be a day when suddenly, oh, I can output, and then it's going to come out, and it's going to be perfect. That's just not going to happen. One thing I've talked about a lot is how I learned English. I learned English through playing RuneScape and watching a lot of YouTube. So, watching a lot of YouTube makes sense. You're listening to a non-scripted content of how native people speak the language. RuneScape, I did do a little bit of reading through RuneScape, but the main thing that helped me from there is the fact that I was actually outputting. And I wasn't doing a lot of it either, just, a little bit, like asking questions to people, interacting with whoever I was doing something with, trying to trade with people and stuff like that. And then eventually I joined clans and I would read what other people were saying and try to participate a little bit. I think the combination of listening to YouTube while trying to somewhat kind of output through RuneScape, through talking with people in the game, I think that actually helped me a lot. And that's something I have not done whatsoever with Japanese. As I said, no early output. I have not output whatsoever. I mean, now I have a little bit, but not at that point when I saw the video. So that made me think back, like, to some of my goals for Japanese. Some of them relate to output. So if I actually want to do these things that I want to do with Japanese, like, let's say, like, currently my plan is to go to Japan next year in February. If I want to actually get to output while I'm there, I'm gonna have to practice first. I can't just keep immersing and hope that by that point output is gonna naturally come to me, right? And so basically, I decided that this year I'm gonna focus on two things. First of all, my immersion is gonna focus on a non-scripted content, so that means a lot of YouTube and some variety shows, because like with variety shows, they're generally not scripted. Like they're planned, but they're not. The things that they say is not fully scripted. But because they're professional speakers and professional comedians, there is like a pattern to what they're saying. So it's not as perfect as like YouTube videos, but it's still like pretty damn close, like compared to say dramas or anime and stuff like that. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not gonna consume any content that's scripted. It's just I'm just gonna try to keep it to a minimum and only do it when I like really feel like it. Basically, my default is gonna be YouTube and variety shows, and then if I feel like doing something else, I will. And yeah, so that's the first part. Immerse mostly only with non-scripted content, and then the second part is output itself. So as you might see. I've added a writing and speaking column to my tracking, and then I need to go and add an output section in my overall like monthly tracking. But so basically, my plan right now in February, I'm not gonna force myself to output, but I have started using HelloTalk and talking to a couple of people and posting on my timeline and stuff. So like. I'm gonna do it when I feel like it, as I immerse, right? Because I want to kind of just break the ice, break into it, and break that mental block that I have with output from years of forcing myself not to output. Then in March is when I'm gonna start doing forced daily written output. I'm doing writing first because. That gives me time to actually think about what's gonna come out of, well, not my mouth, my fingers, I guess. And I think it's gonna be a nice way to ease myself into it again, for the sake of, breaking that mental wall I set to myself. And then if I feel like it, I'm gonna also start doing some spoken output, just a little bit here and there, but again, not gonna force myself. And then in April, at that point, I mean, maybe my plan's going to change by now, but my plan right now is that in April, that's when I'm going to start forcing the daily spoken output. And then after that, I don't know what the plan is, but I'm going to just keep immersing with non-scripted content and then keep practicing my writing and speaking, hopefully with a focus on speaking, because all of my goals relate more to speaking rather than writing. But yeah. I guess that's gonna be my my plan for the 5th year, and we'll see, I guess, in a year how that went. So, in my 5-year update video, which I will be making, I'm saying it right now, I will be having a spoken output section in it. What I'm gonna talk about is a whole other story, but I absolutely do want to put some outputting in there. And it's not going to be perfect. It's definitely not going to be perfect. I'm sure even with nearly a year of practice, I'm not going to be like the best Japanese speaker ever or anything like that. But again, for the whole perfectionism thing, I want to like put it out there. And I'll definitely put some clips on Twitter before then. So as I said in the beginning, if you don't follow me on Twitter, go follow me now if you want to hear that throughout the year. Yeah, I guess that's going to be it for this video. I have no idea how long this is. I've been recording for like 55 minutes now. So I'm going to try to cut it down, but it's probably going to still be like 40 to 45 minutes. So like I said earlier, I really hope you watched this at 1.5 times or even 2 times speed. But if you did stick to the end, thank you. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, just leave a comment and I'll reply to any of them. And yeah, so I guess I'll see you again in a year. Bye.